Rocket League toxicity. You probably already know about it, but in case you don't, Rocket League's pretty toxic. Even when you're trying to be nice and promote a friendly environment, some people just can't help themselves. This isn't exactly a hidden issue, and it's covered in tons of videos, but in all the videos I've seen, there was never actually any effort given to determine how toxic the Rocket League experience really is. So as a certified Rocket League addict, I set out to collect enough data to finally answer the question, how toxic are Rocket League players? Really? To find out, over the past year, I played nearly 500 doubles games while collecting data on player behavior and overall match behavior. But I didn't just stop there. I was also equally curious to determine if your behavior had any significant impact on how other players behaved. So I spent half the games acting friendly every game and the other half acting neutral to see what differences I would find, making for 2 samples. I could have also added another section where I spent every game acting toxic, but come on, I'm just not doing that, okay? Leave me alone. In each sample, I measured both the experience I had in the match overall and the experience I had with each individual player, or in other words, their behavior. Behaviors were divided into 6 categories, from very friendly to very toxic and everything in between, plus an exception if it's both. That about summarizes the study, so if you don't really care how I performed the study and just want to get to the juicy results, you can jump to the results section since this video is organized into marked sections. Seriously, if you're not into nerdy methodology stuff, it's gonna get really boring really fast, okay? Okay, well, assuming you're as much of a loser as I am and want to hear about the technical stuff, here it is. The methodology. As mentioned before, there are 6 sections ranging from very friendly to very toxic, and an extra category if it's both. A friendly category is any communication or in-game action that is explicitly supportive, cooperative, or encouraging toward teammates or opponents, whereas a toxic behavior needs to be explicitly hostile, insulting, or disruptive towards teammates or opponents. This is mostly just common sense, but the catch is that the behavior has to be explicit and obvious, leaving no room for confusion of what their intentions might have been. Meaning, if my teammate spams okay when the other team scores, I won't consider it toxic unless the context of the game proves that his intentions are truly toxic. A key detail here is that this can even be in the form of an in-game action. Anything that doesn't qualify as friendly or toxic is automatically classified as being neutral. I'm even counting responses to my own actions, so if I say nice shot and someone responds with thanks, I'm counting that as a friendly action even if it wouldn't have happened otherwise. This is one of the big reasons why when I started this study, I predicted a stark difference in the amount of friendly players between the neutral category and the friendly category, since I would basically be constantly prompting people to act friendly in one sample, and in the other I would be acting like I didn't exist. Keep this in mind later and see if the results reflect this idea. Those 3 categories are fairly simple, but it gets a little more complicated. Each time a player acted in a way that could be considered inherently friendly or toxic, that would be considered one instance of that behavior happening. To help explain, a scenario where your teammate spams "what a save" and a scenario where he simply presses it once will be treated the same, since they are both in response to a singular event, assuming his intentions are clear. Now, if that player went on and continued spamming further after yet another goal, that would be another instance, since it's in response to a different event. You only need one instance for the friendly or toxic categories, and at least one instance of each behavior type is required to be placed in the both category, even if a player may lean more towards one type of behavior. Post-game messages will be considered as only one instance, but I will not be counting GG as a positive instance even though it technically qualifies. This is because many players have the Auto GG mod enabled through Ragus mod, which types it in for them, making it not an action by the player at all. And even if the player does manually type it in, they do so seemingly more often as a result of general gaming culture or out of habit than as an explicit act of intentional friendliness. I also think that it would just skew the results unfairly. While only one instance of behavior puts you into the regular toxic or friendly categories, the extreme categories require at least 4 separate instances of that behavior, or one instance of behavior that is already so extreme that it bypasses the 4 separate instances requirement. This is definitely the vaguest definition of the categories I've given, so I'll try to give an approximate bare minimum requirement to be considered into the extreme categories off of one instance. For the very toxic category, I would say that telling someone they're terrible at the game or calling them trash would meet the criteria. And for the very friendly category, telling someone that they're excellent at the game would meet the criteria. It's really that simple. If I consider an instance to be about on that level or greater, then it will be immediately categorized into the extreme categories without needing any other instances to qualify. The amount of variations in how people can be very toxic and very friendly are so wide-ranging that it would take forever to cover every way it can happen, but that is the bare minimum. It's important to note that exceptionally few people made it into the extreme categories off of only one instance. It's also worth noting that in nearly every occurrence that a player was placed into the extreme categories off of one instance, they went far beyond merely giving either a very nice compliment or a very rude insult. So it usually wasn't a hard choice, and the categories should be fairly accurate. Keep in mind that actions also count towards an instance. So something like match throwing would immediately qualify as very toxic behavior, even if you haven't said a word. Although some behavior is fairly unique to Rocket League and somewhat difficult to categorize. Like, is this positive? It's not toxic. I'm just gonna move on. That covers behavior per player. Now how about per game? The purpose of measuring the experience not just per player but also per game was to provide further information on what the overall experience for each game was. In order to qualify as a friendly or toxic game experience, it would need to be a game that contained exactly one friendly or one toxic player, respectively. To qualify for the both category as a game, it would require at least one toxic or very toxic player and at least one friendly or very friendly player in that match. To be a very friendly or very toxic match, it needs to either contain two or more players of their respective behavior or one player of the extreme categories. It's important to note that sometimes there were instances of a game nearly qualifying as one of the two extreme categories but were bumped into the both category due to the presence of the opposite behavior type. Now I've been yapping enough about other people's behavior during this study, so how did I act during all of this? I mentioned that I acted in two different ways, making for two different sample types, a friendly and a neutral sample. In the friendly sample, there was a couple of rules I tried to follow as closely as I possibly could every game. I would always say good luck, have fun at the beginning of each game, and I would compliment anyone if they ever made an observable goal, save, or play. I was pretty consistent at keeping track of saying good luck, have fun at the beginning of each game, as I'd already built the habit, but I'm sure I missed some opportunities to compliment players. As for the neutral sample, I basically tried my best to not say a word. Ever. There are some instances when I slipped up and accidentally gave a compliment from habit, but whenever that happened, I never counted any responses or reactions to the comment as part of the behavior. Human error on my part is covered more later. Additionally, all the data was taken in doubles games in Grand Champion 1, so every match will naturally equal at least 3 players, as I am not counting myself as a variable since that would massively skew the results. Even if a player immediately leaves, their behavior should still be counted in the final total, although I don't even think this happened. I'm also usually in the US West servers, so the data may only apply to this region. I think that covers everything, but if you have any questions about anything, leave a comment and I'll answer it. Alright, the actual data. This is probably why you clicked on this video, so without any further delay, here it is. Immediately you'll notice that there are far more friendly experiences than toxic experiences across the board. I was kinda surprised at just how much bigger the friendly categories are compared to the toxic ones, even when I was being neutral with other players. So I guess Rocket League may not be as toxic as I had previously thought. With that being said, Grand Champion, the rank which the data was taken from, isn't generally perceived as the most toxic rank. In a 5-year-old study conducted by Rizzo, Diamond was voted to be the most toxic, and Grand Champion was considered the least, by a massive margin. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Grand Champion is truly the least toxic rank, since a significant percentage, if not a majority of the players responding to the survey likely haven't even hit the Grand Champion rank. So naturally they wouldn't be able to judge it, but despite that, I still think the results of the survey are likely accurate, but I'm unsure of quite how much more toxic things would get if the data were taken in a lower rank. As for whether or not your behavior as a player has any significant effect on other players, there are certainly noticeable differences in behavior. Your behavior has only a minor effect on how often you encounter other friendly players, more on that later, but it has a more significant effect on how often you encounter toxic players. Meaning, if you act friendly in your games, you will see a minor increase in friendly players and a noticeable drop in the amount of toxic players each game. These trends are even more noticeable when comparing the data through percentages. In order to compare one percentage relative to another, you need to find its relative difference. Let's say we have two numbers. Subtract the smaller percentage from the larger one, then divide by the baseline, which is the percentage you're comparing against. To help visualize, 10 is 100% larger than 5, but 5 is only 50% smaller than 10. This gives you how much bigger or smaller one rate is relative to the other. Using this method, we can determine that you are a whopping 79% more likely to encounter toxic players, and 29% more likely to encounter very toxic players in neutral games compared to the friendly ones. Conversely, you are 32% less likely to encounter friendly players, and you are 6% less likely to encounter very friendly players in neutral games than in friendly games. I could go on, but if you want to make these comparisons yourself for anything that I haven't covered, just use the formula that I used. Now, these were not the results I was expecting. In the previous section, I had predicted friendliness to encourage more friendly behavior, but instead the results show the opposite. Acting friendly deterred toxic behavior more than it encouraged additional friendliness. But even so, this does show that your behavior does have an impact on other players' behavior, just not in the way that I thought it would. Alright, well, that's it. You can stop watching the video now. There's nothing left to be said, so... Wait, we're not done yet? There's like 7 minutes left of the video, what the hell? As much as I'd like everything to be perfect and flawless, that's just not the case. There are two kinds of inaccuracies that arise in this study: simple human error and imperfections with my methodology. The first one is easier to explain, so I'll start with that. In each sample, I'm attempting to act a specific way to properly measure other players' behavior, but sometimes I don't follow it exactly. Anytime I miss a chance to be friendly in the friendly sample, or anytime I accidentally give a compliment in a neutral game, are examples of this kind of error. Notably, if I end up saying "good luck, have fun" at the beginning of a game that is intended to be a neutral sample game, then I'll just change plans and act like it was meant to be a friendly game from the start. Now, this kind of error is pretty uncommon, as I got pretty consistent at acting the part since I was playing hundreds of games like this, but this next kind of error unfortunately is quite common. Since I'm only taking data from doubles games, not including myself, each game should account for exactly 3 players. Even if a player leaves, they will be counted, so there is no exception to this rule. By this logic, we can take the amount of games played, multiply that by 3, and we should get the exact amount of players for the corresponding games played. Except we don't. It looks like I missed a lot of players in both samples, but it shouldn't be too bad. 9% is missing from the friendly sample, and 12% is missing from the neutral sample. That is a lot more than I was expecting. About 1 in every 3 games I missed a player. When I first calculated this, I was stunned. I thought that it would render the results of my data completely pointless. But I have a strong reason to believe that the missing data is likely either evenly distributed between the categories, unchanging the results, or mostly cluttered into the neutral category, which would only have a negligible effect on the results. There are 2 reasons why I think this. First, the missing percentages are close across the 2 independent datasets, suggesting the omissions were random human error, not a systematic bias towards a specific behavior. Second, apparently, this rate of error for observational research and real-time tracking is pretty common and hardly unusual. To be completely honest, this was really frustrating to research, and I didn't find anything that matches the conditions of my study very closely that also happens to measure the error rate. So instead, I tried searching for observational research that accounts for the error rate, and the closest I got to this is a study that measures the reliability of performance analysis for sports. To summarize, trained analysts had observational error rates below 8.5%, whereas inexperienced observers made error rates ranging from 15 to 20% in rugby and 11 to 44% in football. Roughly half of these errors were due to failing to record the behavior altogether, which is the same type of omission I am experiencing in my study. Now, I know this doesn't fully apply to my situation, and normally error rates in data entry are much lower, even as low as 1%. But this is observational data entry in real time that requires a level of complexity that could explain the high error rates. That about sums up any potential human errors. How about methodological imperfections? First, let's talk about scope. The data can only fully apply to the specific circumstances in which it was taken. So that means that the group it is most relevant for is people playing doubles on US West servers who are Grand Champion 1 between 2024 and 2025. In different ranks, in different regions, in a different game mode, or in the future, this data may not apply as accurately. Secondly, there are some imperfections with the different behavior categories. The friendly and toxic categories are pretty robust, but I loosely define what I would consider a very toxic or very friendly singular instance. I try to give some examples and establish a bare minimum level of behavior an instance has to cross in order to be considered into the special exception, but it's entirely possible that some people were put into these categories when they shouldn't have. More information on this is available in the methodology section earlier, but you already know that because you didn't skip it, right? Alright, so why should you care? The results clearly show that your behavior towards being friendly has a massive impact on other toxic players, and even though I didn't explicitly measure it in this study, I'm sure that being toxic has an impact too. To be clear, I'm not saying that if someone's being toxic to you, you don't have the right to fight back and defend yourself. Trust me, I get it. I've had a teammate be AFK at the beginning of a game, lose us a goal, and then call me trash when we lose in overtime by 1 goal. Okay, slight correction. We actually ended up barely winning the game, but still, how do you have the gall to call someone trash after being AFK in the beginning of a game? Like, sometimes I'm genuinely baffled by some players in this game. Anyways, if you care about Rocket League being a better environment, then maybe consider being more proactive and friendlier, or at the very least, consider not being toxic. Wow. I can't believe you just sat through all that. I seriously appreciate your attention, so thank you. As I said earlier, if you have any questions or just want to talk, leave a comment. All of my sources and attributions are in the description, so take a peek if you want to learn more. Oh, and if you liked the video, consider smashing that like button and subscribing. If you didn't, maybe don't do that. You probably won't like my content in the future. I'm not sure where I'm going to take this channel, but expect the unexpected. I have a lot of interest, so don't be surprised if the next video turns out to be something completely unrelated from Rocket League. And if you want to use anything from this video, like my graphs, data, or even just raw footage, feel free to do so. Just make sure to credit me. I hope that you have a wonderful day. See ya!